Hello, I think this is probably the 10th, 11th, 12th or 13th, who knows, I didn't count Beatles video in a row that I did. I'm not really a Beatles only channel, but for some reason I didn't really make this consciously. The last 2-3 months was almost entirely Beatle centric. Maybe after that video I will take a break from Beatle content for a couple of weeks or maybe even months. But this is a Beatles video. It's my ranking of the Beatles movies. I will rank 6 movies. It's really hard to say. Is 8 Days a Week, the Ron Howard movie, really a Beatles movie? It's not part of the ranking, but it's debatable. Could have also been part of the ranking. Of course, there are the official United Artists Beatles movies, but also the TV special Magic Mystery Tour. I think it's very logical to have those in the ranking, but I also decided to have Get Back in the ranking as well, since it's first of all because it's such a great movie, and you can't talk about Beatles on film after without mentioning Get Back in a time where Get Back had been released. So, but I don't want to spoil the ranking, so I just start with my 6 and least favorite Beatles movie, and I like all Beatles movies to a certain extent. I also like this movie. It's a big classic. Some people will probably have this as their favorite Beatles movie, but I was never a big cartoon fan to begin with. So it's Yellow Submarine, of course. Yellow Submarine is number 6. For a cartoon, it's a fine cartoon. I like the psychedelic vibe, but what I don't like is there wasn't really much involvement by the Beatles themselves. They only contributed 4 new songs, and not all of them are among the best. Great songs from their back catalogue, of course, like the title track or All You Need Is Love. So it's still a great soundtrack or song track, as the 90s version of the album was called. But not much involvement. There's the short scene at the end where the Beatles appear, but the voices, also in the English original, were dubbed by actors. They weren't the Beatles themselves, so it's hard to really see it as a real Beatle project in that sense. But it's a good movie. I also like this movie. Number 5 is the Let It Be movie. I think after Get Back came out, it's really got a bit a bad rap. I think it was put down too much. It's only my number 5. First of all, because there's no high quality, high resolution version that I ever owned or could watch it. I've had a very cheap VHS to DVD bootleg transfer. And I don't even have that DVD anymore. I don't know where I have it. But I watched it on that like 10 years ago for the last time, with a restored version of that, with a picture quality like Peter Jackson's Get Back had. I would like it even more, but it's a good movie all in all, and it's not as bad as people say. It's not, the new narrative is that Get Back gives a more balanced view of them in January '69, and that Let It Be is this sour, this toxic atmosphere in the studio, and that's a bit over exaggerated. But it's true that lindsay-hogg did omit some or most of the more joyous, more Beatle humor, sense of humor kind of scenes. He didn't really show them as the friends they still, as Get Back showed, were at that time. So that really can be held against it, but it's still the great music from Let It Be, from that album. It's classic songs, and there is joy also in this movie. It's just, when it came out in May 1970, immediately after the split of the Beatles, it was like this confirmation of the Beatles drifting apart and falling out with each other. So that's why it's not so much fun for a Beatles fan probably to watch this, especially since we've got Get Back now. But it's a good movie. And lindsay-hogg, a very good movie that I can't rank as a Beatle movie. It's a TV movie he made, I think in 2000. Two of Us, about the last meeting between John and Paul. it's really based on the last meeting in, I think, April or September, somewhere in '76. They met for the last time, and it's a fictitious. It's of course not like based on a true story movie, but it's, you know, it takes some inspiration from what John and Paul said in interviews about that last meeting, and Michael Lindsay-Hogg makes his own story out of it. But of course, since he was the guy who not only did Let It Be, he also did like the Paperback Writer, Rain, these videos. So he worked with them since the mid '60s. He knew them very well. So if one could make such a movie of what could have happened in the last meeting, it's probably him. He knew them very well. So his way of dealing with the characters of John and Paul was probably more accurate than if someone else had made that movie who never knew them. So, but that's just a side thing, that's not part of the ranking. Number 4 is probably the most controversial ranking on this list, maybe even more controversial than putting Yellow Submarine on the last in the last position. It's A Hardest Night, to most people probably the number 1 movie. As a movie, you know, as a cinematic experience, it's of course, and artistically it's the best movie, it's the best film, the best scripted Beatles movie, and revolutionary in a way, you know. It's, you know, the cuts, the MTV aesthetic, you know, the music video was kind of invented with that movie, and it's a fun movie, it's a great movie. But I prefer my number 3, Help, which not just the Beatles themselves but also the critics thought was a step down from A Hardest Night. They said it's a stupid '60s spy movie spoof, and you know, it's not that artistic. But you know, I like those kind of movies, and it's almost the start of the psychedelic phase. You know, they weren't really at the psychedelic Beatles, but it has the Sita scene, which led to George Harrison fall in love with Indian culture, and it's also the movie where they were stoned all the time because it was, you know, half a year after Bob Dylan introduced him to weed, and it has this funny, strange Avengers, Batman TV series '60s style. So I really enjoy this. And speaking of psychedelic '60s movies, the next movie is the real psychedelic, in my opinion, masterpiece. It was a big flop. Critics hated it. I think many people still to this day don't think much of it, but for the exact opposite reason why I don't like Yellow Submarine too much. I really love Magical Mystery Tour. It's my number 2. It's one of my favorite psychedelic '60s movies. And I said I don't like Yellow Submarine that much because the involvement of the Beatles wasn't that big. And you know, I'm a Beatles fan. I'm not a fan of Richard Lester or any director or cameraman. I'm a fan of the guys. And Magical Mystery Tour was their vision, first and foremost Paul's, but also the others contributed their scenes to that movie. It's produced by them, it's kind of directed by them, it's financed by them. Everything in that movie is either by them or people from the inner circle, so that's a kind of personal movie. It's like a psychedelic Beatles home movie, and I enjoy that. And number 1 has to be, maybe it's a recency bias because it's the big new thing, but you know, Get Back. What can I say about Get Back? That was just such a revelation even for us diehard fans. I think it was also an introduction, like the anthology 20 years before that was an introduction to many people to the Beatles. I think this was for the newer generation also a kind of introduction to the Beatles, but still it managed to satisfy people like us who probably knew all the bootlegs anyway already from the Get Back sessions. You know, I've got 60, I think probably 60 hours of audio material somewhere on CDs from that session, so I'm familiar with much of it. But now to see it, you know, to watch it as a movie with that great picture quality, and the way Peter Jackson arranged the whole thing, it's a documentary masterpiece. I would say it's probably the best pop rock and roll documentary I've ever seen. And speaking, you know, I spoke about the anthology. You know, if I would also rank the anthology, it would be a tie between Get Back and Anthology as my favorite Beatles movie, but I decided not to rank the anthology because it's a multi-part TV documentary. It's which is Get Back also, but Get Back has more this cinematic feel, probably because Peter Jackson did it, and the way the Let It Be movie by Lindsay-Hogg was filmed with these cameras and stuff. And Anthology is just that's a pure documentary for TV. But of course I love the Anthology, so Get Back Anthology would be my favorites. And yeah, Magical Mystery Tour of the not documentary kind of Beatles movies is my favorite, I have to say. But if you watched my ranking of all the Beatles songs, my favorite Beatles song of all time, and probably my favorite song by anyone of all time, is I'm the Walrus. And the scene alone, the I'm the Walrus scene alone, makes it probably my favorite Beatles movie. Thank you very much for watching.